Sports Network Sweet 16 preview show brought to you by MyBookie.ag. If you want to bet the games, you can go to MyBookie.ag through thegruelingtruth.net. You click on the banner at thegruelingtruth.net. It'll give you 100% bonus cash back. So make sure you go there if you want to bet the games this week. Two people that are probably glad they didn't bet a whole lot of games last week would be myself, Mike Goodpaster, and my co-host, Steve Risley.
Mike, how you doing?
All right. I don't think we were too successful on picking our Final Four.
Well, you know, I mean, I went with the status quo, but with much reservation. How much money do you think my book and buddy lost last weekend?
I don't know how much my book and buddy lost, but mybookie.ag probably did fine. There's no bookies losing money. They'll be fine. I mean, come on, let's face it.
Right.
How many people are going to bet on the University of Maryland at Baltimore County beating Virginia, who wasn't just the number one seed, they were the number one seed?
Yeah, they were is the key operative phrase right there. Well, they are no longer.
And we're texting back and forth during the game, and at the end of the game, I mean, you start talking about the greatest upset of all time, but you know the thing that's really messed up is the only upset I think would be bigger would be NAIA Chaminade beating Virginia in 1982.
Oh, and see, I think the Virginia upset was a bigger upset than that. I mean, Chaminade, you're playing on their home floor in Hawaii, 8-hour time difference. I mean, there's a lot of factors that went into that happening. I think Virginia was highly overrated then. I think they were highly overrated this time. But I consider this to be a much bigger upset than the Chaminade game. The Chaminade has gone on and beat other teams out there in their own tournament. I mean,
not very
you
often.
No, not very often, no. But, you know, you go out there and it's a big time swing. It's you're on their home court in a tiny little gym. I've been in that gym. Not many people there. It's very humid, very sweaty. And if you aren't taking things seriously, you know, everybody in that gym was rooting for Chaminade that day, just as pretty much everybody started rooting for University of Maryland, Baltimore County that day. So I still consider this in NCAA tournament play probably, well, I'd say the greatest upset. I think that
in
there were more.
NCAA tournament play, it has to be the greatest upset.
I don't know. It's all relevant. I mean, it's all relevant. I mean, I did not think that Virginia was going to get to the Sweet 16. I just think that they did not have the moxie. They're a one-dimensional basketball team, very defensive-oriented basketball team, and if somebody could throw up a lot of points and shoot lights out, that they were in deep trouble because they couldn't match the scoring, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened to them.
Yeah, but nobody thought it was going to be in the first round, Steve.
No, nobody did. Of course not. I mean, and I agree with you there. Nobody did, but I would have thought they would have lost in the second round. They had a better chance of losing there, but, you know, thank God University of Maryland, Baltimore County takes care of our dirty work for us and gets them out of there because I didn't think they were worthy of being the number one seed in the tournament overall. I think that's something that's earned over time, not just given to you. Your program earns that right to be the number one. And I don't think Virginia has done anything in their basketball lives to earn that position just because they go 30-3 or whatever it was they finished. Like I said, I thought they were a fairly one-dimensional team, an inexperienced coach in terms of playing on that mode of basketball. And I was surprised. I was flabbergasted like everybody else, but it didn't shock me. We all knew it was going to happen eventually.
Yeah, and I think the other reason we may have known it was going to happen eventually is coaches that play that style that Dick Bennett does, where they rely almost solely on their defense. I mean, that is something that will work well during the regular season, but in a tournament setting, you got to have guys that can score. We see it with Bob Huggins at West Virginia, Mick Cronin at Cincinnati, where they always have these great defensive teams, but they never make a deep run or very rarely make a deep run just because they don't have enough guys that can shoot the ball.
Right, and then you come across the team, and this bodes well that any team that starts shooting well above 50% on their two-point field goals, if you can't match them with points, no matter how good a defensive team you are, great defensive teams are not going to stop people that are shooting 50, 60, 70% from the field. I mean, and the shot clock abodes to that because it basically just gives them more opportunity to put more shots up. Generally, back in my day when I was playing, if a team was that hot, we just would stall them. We'd keep the ball out of their hands so they couldn't score that often. It was easier to defend that kind of shooting night when I was playing when there was no shot clock than it is today when the clock forces you to shoot the ball so many times. And good God, in the second half, everything that those guys threw up was going in the bucket. And I don't care how good a defense Virginia was playing at that point in time, they didn't have the offense to match the shooting prowess that Maryland was showing on that given night. But that's the beauty of the tournament.
Yeah,
that's the absolute beauty of the tournament.
I wrote an article today about the reasons why the tournament had blown up, and I think that's one of the reasons. And I think the more you expand it, the more people you get interested in it. And I think it's proven that the NCAA tournament wasn't real popular when it was 8 teams, 16 teams. It really didn't start to blow up when you got to the 32 and the 48 teams because it included the entire country then.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I've long been a big proponent of taking a look at this thing and saying, let's take a look at the Indiana high school basketball tournament. That was, a major movie was made out of, an Oscar-winning movie at its time, and you open it up to all teams and let all teams play, and then you genuinely have a legitimate champion who's gone through everybody, played everybody. Everybody's had the same opportunity to win. And then all of a sudden you have every school in the country that's a potential University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And lo and behold, we produced Milan in Indiana, those of you that are familiar with the movie Hoosiers. And it didn't happen very often in our state. That's actually the most celebrated time. But it piqued interest in the entire state, and then as Milan marched its way through and ended up winning, of course, we ended up making a major movie about that year. And I would be a big proponent of just saying, take your conference champions, seed those people, and whether you choose to have a conference tournament to determine your conference champion or you want to do league play, however you want to do it, and those teams all get seeded evenly across the country. And then everybody else is just thrown into a blind draw if you're not seeded. And let the chips fall where they may and go play. Because you got to beat everybody to win it all.
Yeah, and
it doesn't mean you're going to play everybody, but you got to beat everybody.
You get teams like Oklahoma State left out who beat Kansas twice in the last 5 weeks. They beat Oklahoma, who got in over them. I think they had a total of 5 or 6 wins over top 20 teams. You keep out USC, but you let UCLA in. UCLA doesn't even have a basketball coach. You can see that when you watch the first 4. But I think it's to the point now that there is always a handful of teams left out, and they let in teams that may be more TV friendly. So, yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with letting everybody in anyways.
No, I anytime you can take as much politics out of the process, especially in sports, which is a game, you roll the ball out and you go play, and you're never going to get the same results 100% of the time, which you will on a computer if you just match up the strengths and weaknesses. But what the thing is that what the seeding committee can't factor in is heart, emotion, spirit, and most importantly, 51% of luck. They can't figure all that into it. And obviously, I think we all would agree, everybody that's watched this tournament this year would agree when the seedings were made, the 2 poster children for what's wrong with this whole process was Oklahoma and Middle Tennessee State. I mean, Middle Tennessee State's a team that, by all accounts, firmly deserved a chance to play for the national championship. They earned it. Oklahoma is a team that we just can't fathom a logical reason why they were there, other than the obvious reasons of a substantial player, a strong conference, and I don't know.
The great thing about
that became the poster child.
Is I think the NCAA's plan was Trae Young takes Oklahoma, beats Rhode Island, and then plays Duke at the noon game with the whole world watching, and luckily for us, Rhode Island took care of that and took Oklahoma out. So it's always good to see the NCAA plans get blown up in their face.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you don't want to dislike the NCAA. You certainly don't, but they've become such a money machine in this entire process that they really, truly have, in my opinion, having been involved with the NCAA since 1977, they become money driven. I mean, everything they do, everything that's going to come forth after the tournament in regard to the shoe companies and things of that nature, is all driven toward raising more and more capital for the benefit of the NCAA, who continues to claim that they're a nonprofit organization, which is very difficult. But I think the greatest way to solve that, again, as I said, it just takes one more weekend. There are roughly 300 Division I programs, basketball programs. One more weekend, you can pare it back down to 64 in one more weekend with some play-in games and some off-site games and whatnot. You add one more weekend to it. But the argument against that is going to be, hey, it diminishes the conference championships. It diminishes the silly 2-hour selection show, having to listen to Charles Barkley for 2 hours, ramble on and on. And that may have been my greatest moment, was the way Auburn got put out of the tournament, just to shut Barkley up.
Yeah.
Good golly, Miss Molly. That may have been my funnest time in the tournament, aside from Virginia going down to a 16 seed. But it just basketball, college basketball is such a great sport, and it is probably the greatest 30-day sporting event that goes on in the United States. I know World Cup soccer is big across the world, but here, nothing rivets you for the span of March, as does the college basketball and March Madness. And anything you can do to keep that pure, I'd be all for it. And that means expanding it up, letting all teams play, giving everybody a shot, and probably it's going to pale out to, you're going to end up with the same 64 teams in the second weekend, or most of them are going to be there, a large percentage of them. But you've given everybody a chance. And for many people in life, all you need is a chance.
Yeah.
But that's either here or there.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start picking these games. I think we're going to go ahead. We're going to start with the first game on Thursday night.
Well, let's do this real quick before we do that. Let's take a look. ESPN just released the Sweet 16 reseeded. ESPN, that big sports organization that's heading toward bankruptcy on its own right anyway, due to too many opinions and not enough facts. But they've now picked Villanova as the number 1 seed overall ranking, Duke number 2, Clemson number 3, West Virginia number 4, Kentucky 5, which is a little bit of a gift, Nevada 6, Texas A&M 7, Texas Tech 8, Purdue drops to 9th, and I guess they're talking about the engineers in Purdue have developed a space-age brace that now is going to allow Haas to play. I guess they've been working on it weekly, and they're thinking they've got this thing rigged, and he's going to be able to play. Spiritually and emotionally, going to be a good move. If it does happen, effectively remains to be seen. We'll see. Kansas 10, Syracuse 11. The joke to me is Gonzaga at 12. I think they're a much stronger team than 12. Florida State, Loyola Chicago. The Hail Marys are going to run out soon enough from Sister Mary or whatever her name is. Michigan at a 15. I'll tell you, Michigan still has that magic in it. I don't think they're going to win it, but because I don't think they're talented enough, or they don't have that one superstar that can carry them like we did in '81 with Isaiah when we thought we were, gelling at the right time. And then Kansas State 16. I think Kansas State's a lot stronger than a 16 seed. So that's how Jay Billis and his group at ESPN looks at it.
Well,
now, breaking down the game.
I had Kansas State 16 because Dean Wade is their best player. He missed the conference tournament. He didn't play in the first weekend. So if you go off of that, without Wade, I think they are the worst team, but it looks to me like they're going to get Wade back. But, yeah, we're going to go ahead. We're going to start with the South region. The first game in the South will be Nevada against Loyola. This is basically a matchup of a 7 and 11 seed. Nevada's offense is extremely good. Loyola has been a team that's kind of flown under the radar all year. When you look at this game, what do you think is the key to this one?
I think consistency would be the key to this game. While Loyola's flown under the radar screen for the year, I don't think that they probably played the level of competition that Nevada has throughout the course of the year. I think that there's probably a little more pressure on Loyola Chicago just geographically from where they're from. More people are going to have greater expectations of them. Nevada, you get out there to New Mexico and Nevada, and people are just kind of like getting that mode of, hey, I'm just happy to be here. And I think the way that Nevada held their poise against Cincinnati, who was, I think, a far superior team, but just, Nevada just has that gut check, not going to quit type attitude, or they displayed that in the first weekend. And I would definitely, I would take Nevada. If I'm picking my pool, I'm going to take Nevada in this game.
Now, I think this game's a toss-up. I mean, if you look at Loyola, they went.
Yeah, it's a toss-up. But
they went to Florida. They went to Florida, beat Florida earlier in the year. They beat Miami and Tennessee, which I think are both good wins against teams that are better than them, physically at least. I think what it comes down to is this. Nevada, to me, has been a top 25 team all year. They were largely overlooked, but I think the thing that really makes Nevada dangerous and why they're able to come back from big deficits is the fact that they're one of the best, if not the best, shooting team left in the tournament. I think Loyola will have to play out of their minds on the defensive side of the ball for 40 minutes. I know when I wrote the article, I picked Loyola 68-67. I'm going to switch that. I'm going to go with Nevada 68-67. I think Nevada's going to win this game.
I agree. Yeah.
It's going to be a really good basketball game, and it's one we didn't expect. So we'll transition here. We're going to go number 9 seed, Kansas State, in the nightcap against Kentucky. Now, I think here the big question is, will Vanderbilt play for Kentucky, Jared Vanderbilt, who is their best rebounder, and will Dean Wade, Kansas State's best player, play? Because I think those are the two biggest factors in picking this game.
Yeah, I think you're missing the biggest factor, and while I hate to admit this, I hate to say it, but it's Calipari. He's been there, done that. And I'm telling you, the farther along in this tournament you get, the more important coaching plays under what you do in each single game. And, while we all have our opinions of John Calipari and the Kentucky program, be them right, be them wrong. They're not on suspension. They've not been put on suspension recently. I got to go with Kentucky here just because I think Coach Calipari knows how to prepare his team, knows how to get him ready to play. He's got a depth of talent on that team. Many of the kids that are sitting on the bench will be starting on other programs that he can go to if he can get them spiritually or physically motivated to go out and play. I would not take Kentucky in this game. I think it's Kentucky wins by double digits. I just do.
All right.
I do only because it's Kentucky and it's Calipari. The players, I just think he's just one of those coaches that knows how to coach tournament basketball. Love him or hate him.
See, I don't think he is.
I
think he's a terrible basketball coach. I think he's a great recruiter, but he's got 4 NBA players every year. He's won 1 championship,
right.
But this is the thing. He's playing against a guy, and I probably overstated that. I think he's a solid coach, but Bruce Weber is a superior basketball coach. I mean, Bruce Weber, his record is 437, 233. He's coached in almost 30 NCAA tournament games. He went to the 05 Final Four, Big 12 regular season champion in 2013 at Kansas State. He was the Naismith Coach of the Year in 2005, AP Coach of the Year in 2005. But I think when you look at him, he took Southern Illinois to the Sweet 16 at least once that I remember. He did a good job at Illinois, which I bet they wish they didn't get rid of him now. But he goes to Kansas State, and Kansas State hadn't really done a whole lot since Lon Kruger in the late 80s, early 90s. So I think you're overlooking Bruce Weber here.
Yeah, and I could be. I could well be. I'm not going to slam Bruce Weber. I think he is a solid coach. But I'm going to tell you something. The Calipari has done, and this, you would only understand this if you come from a program like in Kentucky or like in Indiana or like a UCLA, and Calipari knows how to wear and protect that bullseye that's on his back. Okay? And like I said, the bullseye on Kentucky's back is much bigger than the bullseye on Kansas State's back. And to protect that bullseye, to deflect away from that bullseye, there aren't a lot of coaches that can do that. And Calipari has proven, even though he's only won one championship, he's won one. Okay? And that's one more than Weber's won. And Kentucky every year is somebody's target. Every time they go into play, it's the same thing. If you beat Kentucky, you've had a successful season, irregardless of what their talent level is. So and Calipari is able to coach that and continually put teams into the tournament, continue to make runs in the tournament. I think a lot of us thought Kentucky would not be this far along in the tournament, wouldn't be the Sweet 16. But they're here, and it's not necessarily that Calipari is the best coach. He's a coach he's a smart tournament coach, and I just think he gets his players relaxed. He gets them focused on the game, gets them believing in themselves, and he plays that Kentucky that's on the front of their jersey as strong as anybody. And I believe Kentucky goes into this game up 7-0 before the tip's even played, just because they're Kentucky. And then if Calipari doesn't outcoach himself, I think they move forward. I just think there's a lot to be said.
But winning one championship doesn't make him better than Bruce Weber.
We don't have time to get into that debate. No, it doesn't necessarily. But I just think if I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go with Kentucky just because they're Kentucky, and I don't think Kansas State is a strong enough team to overcome Kentucky's bullseye.
I think
Calipari's better protecting that bullseye than Kansas is attacking it.
I don't know, because Bruce Weber's been pretty good at attacking Kansas from time to time, which is another program with a bullseye on it.
Yeah, no, show me the money, show me your ring.
For what?
Show me the ring. I mean, show me a ring. I mean, Calipari's got one.
Okay, John Wooden's got 10. Is he better than Bobby Knight and Mike Krzyzewski?
How do you argue against that? I mean, he's got 10. How do you argue? How do you legitimately argue? What ultimately do you play for? What do you play college basketball for? What do you play for? What's the ultimate prize?
The ultimate prize?
The ring.
Oh, okay.
Is the ring.
I'll tell you.
With 10 to 3 and 10 to 4 or 5, however many Duke's got, I mean, yeah, he's better. But again, you're not talking about if Knight played Wooden in a head-to-head game, where would you go with the matchup? Or if Knight played Krzyzewski or Krzyzewski played Wooden, where would you go?
With Wooden against both of them because they won more rings. So, as you being a Peyton Manning fan, you'll admit Tom Brady is the superior quarterback.
Statistically speaking, yes, he is. I mean, he's got more rings.
Well, that's championship speaking. Statistically, it would be Manning. But
yeah,
championship is the other way. But I think if you look at Kansas State, their regular season, they were just as good, I think, as Kentucky during the regular season. They were both in tough conferences. I think Kentucky's going to win the game by 11 points, 10 to 11 points. So
yeah,
my thing is this.
We're in agreement.
If Dean Wade is healthy, it will be a very close game. I don't think he's going to be healthy, though. And I think that's going to be the thing that bites him in the ass in the end.
Yeah, I don't think Kentucky – I think Kentucky's got the easiest path of anybody into the Final Four, because I think that region is really the easiest path in for a team of Kentucky's caliber. On normal surface, and again, this is not – you get year to year, I get that. But I think Kentucky's got the easiest path of a big-time, powerhouse program of getting into the Final Four. I think Kentucky will get to the Final Four. They're not going to win the tournament. They're not talented enough to win the tournament, and Calipari's not a good enough coach with lesser talent to win the tournament. But looking at the three teams he's got to go through, I think he's got the easiest path to get there. So I'm taking Kentucky this week. We'll see what happens, and I'm telling you, whoever they play in the next week, I'm going to probably take Kentucky into the Final Four.
Well, I can tell you this. I think Nevada comes out of the Final Four of this. I mean, I just do.
Okay. Well, that's not a bad pick.
Well, I mean, I think Loyola could be Kentucky. I mean, the thing about Kentucky is this. They've been so consistent and up and down all year, it's hard to really trust them for 6 straight games. And they very well could have lost to Davidson in the first round. They did play really well against Buffalo. Out of all the big-time programs left, I think Kentucky has the easiest path. And
right. Yeah.
As we've talked before, as you said, a lot of this is luck. And when you get the number one and basically every seed above you gets knocked out in the first weekend, it makes it a lot easier.
When we won in '81, number one DePaul, number two Kentucky got beat in the playing games or the pre-games, and we waltzed into Bloomington playing at home as the number 3 seed in the Mideast region, and ended up playing Boston University,
you played
St. Joe's,
UAB, and St. Joe's.
St. Joe's, yeah, and Boston College, Boston University was the other team I think playing. And yeah, dumb luck that Kentucky and the 1 and 2 seeds in our Mideast region get put out. It could have been a whole different outcome at that point.
Yeah, really, it was 1, 2, and 4 because I think Boston College with Michael Bagley was the number 4 seed that year.
Yeah, it might have been. But I look at this. This is the most wide open region, the South. I think anybody can come out of here, but anybody can is not a bet in Vegas. MyBookingBuddy.com would not take that bet. Anybody, they're not going to do that bet. They're going to make you pick somebody, and I'm going to pick Kentucky just by simple fact that they have the tenure, they have the knowledge. Calipari is a coach who's been there, done that, and I wouldn't discredit that given the fact that all the other parameters are pretty well dead even among any 4 of those teams. I think talent-wise, all 4 of those teams are pretty close talent-wise. It's not going to be like when we go to the Villanova bracket.
Yeah, next up, well, I think you go to Villanova bracket they are too because you got Villanova and Duke. But when we go to the West region, which is where we'll go next, we're going to start off with Florida State, who upset Xavier because of some bullcrap calls against JP Mikura, but Xavier didn't make their free throws. I'm not a homer. They will play Gonzaga, who actually struggled through most of their first 2 games, but got the wins there. I think Gonzaga, there's no doubt, they're led by one of the best coaches in college basketball, Mark Few.
Right.
He's coached this team to the point where they've improved, I think, over the season as much or more than any team in college basketball. On the other hand, you got Florida State, who has probably been the most wildly inconsistent team. But the thing about Florida State is they got 2 guys well over 7 feet tall. Neither one of them can play, but they can bang on you. And they are very athletic. And I think that Florida State does have a chance to win this game if Gonzaga tries to run with them. But if Gonzaga can get in the half-court offense and hit their threes, I think they'll win this game easily.
Florida State?
No, I think Gonzaga. If Gonzaga can play this at their pace.
Here's what scares me to death. What scares me to death is a team like Gonzaga that just finds a way to win every damn game. Okay? They don't win big. They don't win pretty. They just grind you into the ground. They don't make mistakes. They're very well coached. They play until the buzzer sounds every single game. Until they had the national championship won last year, until they come up against North Carolina, who plays probably the best game of the entire season that North Carolina plays, to beat them. Other than that, that game may have been a different story. But Gonzaga is a team that it will scare any coach because the only way you're going to get by Gonzaga most likely is Gonzaga's going to beat themselves. And I don't think Florida State is consistent enough to play with Gonzaga because Gonzaga is incredibly consistent. And if you stay consistent over the course of a 40-minute game, stay to your game plan, you have a coach as good as Mark Few is, I don't think Florida State stands a chance. I call this a double-digit win for Gonzaga as well. Any way you slice it. I just think they'll wear them down.
And
they'll just wear them into the ground. And what will happen is Florida State will start pressing. They'll start taking dumb shots. They'll start taking chances defensively. And they'll quit. They'll quit not because they're quitters. They'll quit because they don't know how to win it. That's why they'll just quit. They'll get out of the game plan.
And I think the only chance that you have for the upset here is kind of the same thing that happened to Xavier, because Xavier and Gonzaga, I think, are teams that are kind of similar, only Xavier has even more talent, and that's the fact that if you get in foul trouble, especially with your point guard the way Xavier did, when Florida State starts with the full court press and everything, if you don't have a guard there that can handle that, you got problems. So I think the key is here, just stay out of foul trouble, play the game, and they'll win this game by double digits.
Yeah, and Few's a master. Few may be one of the 5 best bench coaches in the game right now, and that he will control the tempo of this game. And that's, again, I go back to North Carolina last year. He just got out-coached by Roy Williams is a very good coach, and they had a much more talented team. And those two combinations make it hard for anybody to do anything. And North Carolina played on fire last year. Yeah, that's the scenario that Gonzaga just can't deal with, because they just don't have the talent to deal with that and can't match up when a team's playing like North Carolina played last year. But this is last year. At this point, Florida State is nowhere close to how North Carolina was last year. And I think Mark Few, I would almost say he's one of the two best coaches left in the tournament. Three, because you got to look at Villanova, you got to look at Duke, and you got to look at Gonzaga as having great coaches
that just
can really dictate the tempo of the game. Pardon?
Few hasn't won a championship.
No, he has not, but he's played in one. He's gotten himself to one. And you're right. I mean, you can throw it all back in my face all you want.
Now,
but,
see, my point is this. I'm not throwing it back in your face. What I'm saying is this. I think a guy like Bruce Weber and a guy like Mark Few, even a guy like Chris Mack that are at smaller schools that are maybe playing with lesser talent but still competing with these guys, I don't think you could just say that somebody's a great coach because they won a championship. I mean, I think it goes a long way.
Agree.
But when you've got constantly the best talent in the country, and you have had for, hell, let's face it, at Memphis he had a lot of talent too. At UMass he had Marcus Camby, but you still only got one championship. I would make the argument that if you take Mark Few and you put him with that kind of talent for 20 years, he's going to have 5 or 6 championships.
I agree. But I also will say this. In defense of Calipari, and I don't get back on Calipari because we've already picked that region for the Sweet 16, nobody year in and year out wears a bigger bullseye on their back than Kentucky. Nobody does, because everybody dislikes that program, except for people in Kentucky. They dislike Calipari because he's Calipari, and they don't think they play above board. That bullseye on his back is so large for them to have the success that they're having year in and year out. Tells me that Calipari's got some skill set somewhere to do something to keep his team relevant every single year. So enough of Calipari and Kentucky. Get off of it. I mean,
all right, so
we made that pick. I got Gonzaga.
We got Gonzaga. We both got them. Yeah, I had them by 11.
Now Michigan. Yeah, I think Michigan rolls into playing Gonzaga, and then they're.
I think you're nuts. I don't think there's any way on God's green earth that Michigan could beat Texas A&M.
Okay.
I don't.
All right.
I mean, when I look at them, Texas A&M first half of the season may have been one of the top 3 teams in the country. I mean, they're playing in the SEC, which is a tough conference. And Michigan, I'm sorry, when I look at the Big Ten, Purdue and Michigan are the only 2 teams left. I don't think that it was an extraordinarily tough conference. I do think Michigan with John Beilein, I think Beilein's a hell of a coach. But I think Michigan State athletically is just a more talented team. Now, I think that Beilein could control this game, make it a half-court game, and get a chance to win it at the end. But I think that what we saw with Texas A&M against North Carolina is not an aberration. And the reason I say that is I watched Texas A&M beat West Virginia by like 30 or 40 points at the start of the year also. So I don't think this is a game that's going to be easy. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to go down to the wire. But I think A&M just has too many horses for them.
Yeah, well, let me ask you a question. How did Michigan win their last game?
They hit a shot at the buzzer.
From where?
Like 23
About
feet
30
away.
feet, 35 feet.
I don't know. It's 30 or
30. As the clock went off while the ball was in the air?
Yeah.
Michigan's got some destiny riding with them right now, and it's not going to carry them because they don't have Isaiah Thomas like we had in '81. We had that destiny riding with us. We were a team of Isaiah Thomas and a bunch of other guys. And we had destiny riding with us. I tell you, I know because I lived through it. But we had Isaiah Thomas. So we had the greatest player in college basketball that year. And that made a difference. But Michigan has the destiny with them. They won the game. It was a game they shouldn't have won. They won it. They will win this game. And then Michigan will go out in a blaze of glory against a better team, which is Gonzaga. That's how I see it. You can't statistically analyze Michigan right now. If you do, you'll pick them. They shouldn't be where they are. They damn near shouldn't be in the tournament, but they are, and they're there because they've got this gelling factor, this destiny. whatever you want to call it, but they do not have the talented player that can rise to the occasion and get above destiny and carry them. But they won the game on a fluke. To me, that's a fluke shot. It's a shot you hit 1 out of 10 times as the buzzer's going off. They hit it. They're not done yet. They'll be done against Gonzaga, but they're not done yet because Gonzaga is a better coach team, and I do think Beeline's a great coach, but I think Few's a better coach. And I think that Few's team is better organized and more disciplined to play. But I take Michigan just in the same way they won every other game in the streak that they're running right now, winning the Big Ten tournament. They shouldn't have won the Big Ten tournament. They came through and they won it. They're just doing things on a consistent basis that nobody expects them to do. And you can't discount that in any way, shape, or form. And now at some point it's going to run out on them.
I agree with you. And my problem is I just think Texas A&M is that good of a basketball team.
I don't think so. I think they're going to see the big maize and blue M, and they're going to just shit their pants just a little bit. And I think that it's just going to be enough to carry Michigan through to the next game. I think Gonzaga won't even know what the first letter of it is that Michigan starts with.
But my question is, why would somebody shit them pants because they saw a big M from Michigan on a basketball court?
It's just packaging's everything in this country. Haven't you figured that out yet?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I've never really noticed Michigan as being a dominant program.
Well, you know.
I mean, they're a good program, but I mean,
I've seen more 30 for 30s done on the Fab Four, the Fab Five, or than I've ever seen done on anything to do with Texas A&M basketball. So they are a dominant program. They are a program, and Indiana took it to them in '76 for the national championship game, and it's just not real. It's a hunch feeling. On paper, you're right. On heart, which is where I've been and how we did it, I'm right.
Well, you're not.
Michigan will not.
This is the thing. Texas A&M has a ton of heart. They fought Providence. They fought the SEC all year. They go to Kentucky and play Kentucky, and if you're going to beat Kentucky, I think that you're not really going to be intimidated by Michigan.
And I'm just telling you right now, anything you try and tell me that somebody does during the regular season does not count in the tournament. It doesn't count. It's a different.
But I can tell you this: in the tournament so far,
sure you did. You told me that Texas A&M went and beat Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, playing Kentucky, playing Michigan. I don't know why you'd shit your pants against either one. But when I look at this, I watched the first two games, and Texas A&M beat the better competition, and they did it convincingly. So if we're talking about just the tournament, they've been more impressive in the tournament. What you're going off of is Michigan was hot 2 weeks ago. Michigan wasn't hot this week. I mean, they beat two teams that they should have probably beat. I think Houston's just as good as Michigan. I think they might be a little bit better, but it's not like they beat a team. It's not like they beat Villanova. It took a last-second shot to beat Houston, and I don't think there's too many people. Even if Houston was 6 and Texas A&M was a 7, I think Texas A&M is the more talented team. But we'll see. And then Friday night, one of us can say we told you so.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. I'm going with Michigan just because of the emotional part of the game, and I think that Beilein is a good coach, and he will do all he can to not let this team beat themselves. And Michigan is just playing well together. I don't really know enough about Texas A&M to know how they're going to withstand playing against a team that's probably not going to throw it away. And I think Houston played well. I think Houston surprised me. Calvin Sampson surprised me as to what he put together down there. He even had an Indiana kid playing on his team, kid I coached in AAU ball, Devin Davis. And Michigan still finds a way to prevail. Michigan, to a lesser degree than Gonzaga, is one of those teams right now that's just finding ways to win ball games. So that's all I'm going on.
Next up,
on paper, I think you're right. So I got Michigan taking that game.
All right, next up, we've got Clemson against Kansas on Friday night. I think the Tigers are a team that have been vastly underrated all year.
I agree.
Kansas is a team that doesn't have the star power of previous years. But the Jayhawks, they're definitely a well-coached team with Bill Self. But I like Clemson in the upset here.
I like Clemson in the upset. I think that's the upset of the Sweet 16, truthfully. And I don't know that I really call it an upset. I think the media is going to call it an upset.
Well, that's what all upsets are perception.
Right, exactly. They are protected. I think Clemson's a better team. I would say it would be almost an upset for me, knowing what I know about the game, which is not everything, but a lot, that I think Clemson's a better basketball team across the board. I think they're more consistent in their play. I think they play tougher competition day in and day out. I just think that they're equally very well coached teams. One has some history to him, and one, doesn't. But I think Clemson's on a little bit of a mission here. I think Kansas thinks they're Kansas. A lot of those things factor in, but I would strongly go with Clemson in this game as the biggest surprise. I don't want to call them upsets anymore, because no upsets are going to occur anymore, in my opinion. All these teams are ranked the same to me now when you get to the Sweet 16, for the most part.
All right. Next up, we got a game that I think
we both like Clemson in this game.
Yeah. Next up's a game I think would be an upset. West Virginia against Villanova. I think Villanova has been the best team all year. I think they're the best team left in the tournament. If you watch what they did to Alabama and Radford, you expect Radford, but Alabama, that's a game that it was 20-20. I went out to the garage for like 5 minutes and came back in, and it was like 39-20, and I'm like, what the hell happened? But Villanova, they've got one of the best players in the country in Brunson. They got one of the best coaches. He's won a national championship. They're going up against West Virginia, which is a team that every year Bob Huggins falls short. I think Villanova wins this game by double digits.
I think you're right. Although the only thing that concerns me is how many games did Villanova lose this year? 3?
4, I think.
4, and 3 of them, or 2 or 3 of them were to Butler, right?
Yeah, but Butler.
Yeah, well, see, what concerns me about Villanova a little bit is kind of what concerned me a little bit about Xavier, in that how much adversity has Villanova faced this year? I mean, how much pressure and adversity? They have had smooth sailing all the way through, and that kind of is what happened to Virginia. Virginia, didn't face a lot of adversity. They were beating people soundly, doing it consistently, and then they get some adversity thrown at them. And I'm going to tell you, Bob Huggins, don't discount that guy as a coach. He's a character. There's no doubt about it. But the guy can coach basketball. I mean, aside from a few DWIs, he's still coaching at Cincinnati and maybe wins the championship there. Who knows? But Huggins is not a guy that I'd want to face in a tournament. You're right. I mean, on paper, I'm still going to go with Villanova, but the thing that I would look at this game is, what does Villanova do if Huggins comes out, throws something unique at him, throws something different at him, or gets hot, or how does Villanova respond? Because we really haven't seen that other than with Butler. Because no team has really. This,
everything Bob Huggins has done, Jay Wright's seen, because West Virginia was in the Big East just a few years ago and playing 3 times a year.
Yeah, no, but Bob Huggins is the kind of guy that can do different things. He's a good enough coach.
So I don't think he is.
And if we know that,
he's a joke, dude. I mean, I watched him in Cincinnati, consistently losing the first or second round. I mean, he's got to have a chauffeur everywhere he goes, and we know why. You just brought that up. I mean, I've seen him take a lot of talent and turn it into a first or second round loss. West Virginia, if John Beelan would have stayed there, would have been in multiple Final Fours. They've made one with Huggins. UC made it one with Huggins. Huggins is not a great game coach. What Huggins is he's a great defensive concept coach. When you watch his teams run their offensive sets, I mean, it's better than Steve Alford at UCLA, but not much. So I think the problem with West Virginia is kind of like Bennett at Virginia, is their defense will play well. But even if their defense plays well, no matter how well they play with Brunson and the kind of weapons Villanova has, and their best players are in their backcourt with Brunson, so they're going to be able to handle this press and break it. They're big underneath also. I just think this is a game that will probably be close for 30 minutes, and then I think Villanova will pull away because of the coaching, and they've got the best player on the floor in Brunson, and that has a big bearing on who wins. You know that because 81, a lot of that was Isaiah just, get on my back.
Right. No, I agree. I can't dispute that. I'm just saying I just want to see how Villanova, if Huggins and West Virginia can throw anything at them, how do they handle it? Because they really haven't been tested. It doesn't mean close games. I mean, they haven't. I don't know game by game but they've been in a very adversity situation where they've had to really battle back, other than Purdue, Butler, and they failed twice at doing that. They couldn't come back on Butler. Butler had their number both times. Butler is, just a well-coached, under-talented team against a Villanova, and they found ways to beat them. So, and one team figured it out.
Well,
now,
I think Butler plays.
Figured it out.
Butler plays the style of basketball that always gives Villanova trouble. Even if Villanova won it all, Butler beat them once. Butler beat them once last year. They've had their number because their style of play is they play really good perimeter defense, and they've shot the ball well when they played them. And see, my thing is this: to beat Villanova, you're going to have to shoot the ball well. And I don't think West Virginia, they're not a consistent offensive team. So, West Virginia could come out and play out of their minds and win the game, but that's every game we're looking at here. I'm just looking at the season as a totality as a whole. Is Villanova is more consistent, and if you give me a choice between a team that's been consistent all year and a team that's been up and down all year, I'm going to go with the team that's consistent. That's why I got to go with Villanova. Plus, I just think they're better.
I agree. I agree on everything you just said. But if you don't think that if you and I are sitting here talking right now, and we're not saying, what did Butler do to figure it out? If you don't think that Huggins' staff is not sitting there and go, what did Butler do to figure it out?
Yeah, but see, Huggins is going to press no matter what.
And maybe I don't know. Maybe okay. I
the only time that I've seen
I think Villanova's moving forward.
Yeah, the only time the only time I've not seen him press was the time they upset Kentucky. They came out and surprised them with a zone.
Yeah, well, I'm saying Huggins is smart enough as a coach, no matter what kind of character he is or clown he is or whatever, that it doesn't look back and say, hey, this worked then, would it work now? What has Butler done can we mimic what Butler did? Do we have the talent ability to do that? I think Villanova wins. I think Villanova wins in double digits. I don't think – I don't think it's a close game. But I'm just saying there's a chink in Villanova's armor in the sense that they haven't been really tested and haven't faced a lot of adversity this year. And I think West Virginia, no matter what you say about them, they're a dangerous team.
Well, any team left.
They're a dangerous basketball team. Huh?
But the difference is this. Butler has guys that can shoot the ball. West Virginia doesn't have many guys that are going to light you up from the perimeter. And that's what got to Villanova with the half-court offense they ran against them. Because I actually watched both games because I was cheering for Xavier to win the Big East title, which they did, and that means absolutely not a damn thing now. The next game, we got the Syracuse Orangemen, a team I don't think should have been in a tournament. And even though they won 2 games, I still don't think they should have been. But they will be playing Duke. Syracuse's defense has befuddled everybody. I think Syracuse's time runs out here, though, because they're playing Coach K. They've already played a couple times this year, and I think it's going to be hard for Syracuse to throw something at Duke that will throw them off their game.
I agree. I think that, the Syracuse zone is something that's befuddling me that nobody can figure that thing out. But they basically started the downfall of Tom Crean at Indiana, the game that they played on national TV when they threw that zone at Crean in the second half, and we couldn't score a point. They had Oladipo and they had talent on that team. 2 or 3 kids that are playing in the Yogi Ferrell, kids are playing in the NBA right now that couldn't figure out how to break that zone. Krzyzewski can figure out how to break that zone. I think this is the end of the sweet run for Syracuse. I don't think this is a close game. I think that Duke is too well coached, too talented, and they're too consistent in their ability to break things down. That I don't think this is even a close game.
Well, see, I think it might be a close game just because of the familiarity of playing each other so much. But I'm saying somewhere around 8 to 10 points.
Yeah, to me in the tournament, that's not a close game. I mean, when you get 8, 10 double digits, start pushing double digits, you're controlling a team. And these are arguably the 16 best teams left, 16 best teams because they've gotten this far. And despite what anybody's sports writer's opinion of them is, these are the 16 best teams because they've gotten this far. They've made it. They figured it out.
Yeah, you can't argue that either because this is the thing.
No, you can't argue
Everybody
that. Right.
always talks about, well, in this year, this team with 10 losses won it all or something, and they weren't the best team. But the thing is,
they were.
When you look at that, to get to that point, I mean, You coach the season for your team to be ready for these games that are one and done in March. And if you don't do a good enough job of that, even if you're 32-2, Virginia didn't do a good job of getting ready to play in the tournament.
No. And a lot of that being good enough comes with experience. Because of having been there, you have to learn. I mean, you learn from mistakes. The Department of Redundancy Department. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But the teams that haven't been there and haven't, learned what works and what doesn't work, and what works in league play doesn't work in one and done play. A coach's ability to bench coach. I don't even know if Syracuse can get in their zone if Duke gets up on them quick. You've got to play man-to-man. Then you can't play zone when you're that far behind. Just sit out there and run the clock out on you. Okay, so maybe Duke's smart enough. Krzyzewski knows that. You and I can talk about the fact that, hey, you want to shut their zone down? Get ahead. So they can't play their zone.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, what's he do? He's got nothing. So, you look at a team like that and say, okay, boys, we got to come out to a fast start. We got to get in the league quick. We got to get it in double digits as fast as we can. They'll never get in their zone. And then without that zone, Syracuse is not even a factor. They may be the weakest team in the tournament.
Yeah.
That's left, as far as I'm concerned, without that zone. The only thing that's keeping them in the tournament is that zone. They're not a prolific scoring team. They're not a great offensive team. Boeheim, I don't think, is a top-tier coach. He's a top-tier tenured coach, but I don't think he's a top-tier coach in terms of mastering beating people with different things. He's built a good zone defense with tall players, and basically he's hard to shoot over. He's got long arms, hard to get through him. But Duke's going to look at it and go, you want to beat that zone? Jump out 10-0 on them. They can't play zone.
All right.
Takes them out of it. They've got nothing.
The final game of the Sweet 16 will be the Texas Tech Red Raiders against the Purdue Boilermakers. Purdue, of course, looks like they've lost Isaac Haas, which it's a big deal, but I don't think it's a killer for this team. I
don't think it's a killer either.
They're still a big-time threat to at least make a Final Four run. I think Texas Tech, I think this is going to be a very close game. Texas Tech's really good defensively. They've been through the fire a little bit in the Big 12. They did well the first week of the tournament, of course, because they're here. I'm going to take Texas Tech in like a 1 or 2 point game, but I think this is a toss-up.
It's a toss-up, but I'm going to go with Purdue. I think the biggest weakness Purdue has, sadly, because I like the guy, is Matt Painter. I just don't think that he's probably a coach who's matched to the talent that he has on the floor. I think most of the failures of Purdue in the tournament have been more coaching-driven than they have talent-driven. I have been reading on different various sites that the engineers up there are building a brace that Haas is going to be able to wear. I think spiritually and emotionally it's probably a good thing, but anytime you encumber a player like a Haas to start putting braces on him and limiting his mobilization one way or another, there's always going to be pain no matter what if he has a broken elbow. I think that physically he's not going to be anywhere near as effective. I think their backup center is adequate. The rest of the players have to rise to the occasion. I think Purdue wins this game, like you said. Same thing. I think it's going to be a very close game, a hard-fought battle. I'm just going to go with Purdue because if nothing more than I'm a fan of the Big Ten. And if I can't root for Indiana, I'd root for Purdue. But I don't think that either way they get past Villanova, so it doesn't really matter. But I don't think Purdue's time is done yet, but I think they're very much on the precipice of the cliff right there, ready to fall. And they could go down. I think it's a toss. This may be the biggest toss-up game where both teams are so equally matched at this point. It can go either way. One or two calls or one or two missed shots or one or two cheap fouls are going to determine this game, in my opinion.
All right, Steve. That's all 8 games. We're going to be back after the final game on Friday night live for an Elite 8 show. So make sure you check us out there. You can follow Steve on Grueling Hoops on Twitter. If you got any questions for Steve about the NCAA tournament or, of course, Indiana basketball, you can find him on the Grueling Hoops. Correct? That's how it is, Grueling Hoops?
Yeah, there's Grueling Hoops, and there's also S. Risley 34, which is my regular Twitter account, which you can either one I monitor daily. So either one, you got a question, you want a great Isaiah Thomas story or something like that, I can deliver on all that promises too. Tell you some stuff about Bob Knight that never gets printed, whatever. I don't offer anything, but I'll answer everything.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up. So make sure you check us Friday night after the Sweet 16's final game. We'll break down the Elite Eight for Saturday and Sunday. And then, of course, we'll have a Final Four show at some point next week leading into the Final Four. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcast, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.